Okay, it's 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our program. Welcome to our third installment of the Senior Health Series. Today's presentation is with Amy Romaine. Amy is the Program Director of the MSU Sparrow Family Medicine Behavioral Medicine Program. She will be sharing a little bit more about positive psychology and some strategies for helping us as we age and kind of coping with some of the strange events that are going on in 2020. So I thought this was a really timely session for everyone. We, of course, want to thank our sponsors, Bircham Hills, for helping us offer these programs today. So I'm really excited for today's talk. Personally, I heard Amy speak earlier this spring, and it's something that Sparrow offered for caregivers to help them in coping. And I thought it was just personally so helpful that I was really pleased when she was willing to speak with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her, and she's going to take it away. I hope that you will save any questions that you have. You can type them in the chat bar at any point, but we will share them with Amy at the end and have her tackle those at the end of her presentation. So enjoy.
Mute your laptop, I think we'll be good. All right. Don't watch Katie or you'll get motion sick while she's walking to the next room, so we don't have an echo. So good afternoon. Nice to be here. Boy, I sure wish we were all in the same room. I gotta say, I do a lot of teaching in my job in the family medicine residency program. And my favorite way to embrace the topic and share it with other people is to really to have a lot of dialogue and do some exercises together, which we aren't going to be able to do that because of the format. But I'm just glad you're here, and so I've kind of like changed my expectations, which we'll talk more about later, in a way to keep this positive for you. So. The topic today is positive psychology, strategies for creating joy in later life. And this is the agenda. So we're going to talk first about just a brief overview of what is positive psychology. And then we're going to get into talking about the 5 core elements of happiness and psychological well-being. And then I will cover strategies for you that you can employ in your life or dial up a bit if you're already doing them to help promote psychological well-being and happiness in your life, even in the midst of the tough things that are happening. Katie's going to keep track of your questions, so we'll have some Q&A at the end. So what is positive psychology? So positive psychology is actually an umbrella term that refers to a variety of theories and research about what makes life worth living. So this field of study focuses on positive events and influences that happen and help us understand how to help people flourish in their lives. So there's a lot of focus on positive experiences and states and traits. So things like happiness, joy, life satisfaction, love, gratitude, compassion, optimism, self-confidence or self-esteem, and well-being. And in this field, the work is actually applied to individuals and groups, but also to organizations. So for example, in an organizational setting, we might apply positive psychology to help the people who work there be more engaged, be more productive, and have a greater sense of well-being and satisfaction in the work they do. So really at the core of positive psychology is the fact that how we think about our day and our day-to-day living shapes what it means to be happy. So we have had a lot going on in our lives in the last 6 months. So even superimposed on challenges you may have been previously experiencing in your personal life or with your health or age-associated changes, we now have all of the stressors and anxieties and changes related to living in the time of a pandemic. And yet, there are people in your life, people that you know, maybe you're one of them, that no matter what, seem to still retain this sense of joy and happiness in the midst of things that are tough. And that seems to come naturally for some people, but not for everyone. And so if we were together in the same room right now, we would engage in a discussion. We'd like pair up and talk about this exercise, but instead I'm just going to invite you to do it within yourself. So I want you to think for a moment, reflect on the last several months since the pandemic started. And I'd like you to think about what is something that's actually been positive in the midst of all the distress associated with the pandemic. What is something that stands out that despite everything you're going through has been positive? What's something in your life that stands out as something positive? And I just want you to sort of hold that and think about that as we go through our time together this afternoon. So in the midst of all the difficulties you've had, something that's positive. So an example for me might be that my adult children came back home during the stay-at-home order. And though they were all experiencing loss and different things happening in their life that they couldn't do, the 5 of us were once again together under one roof and, you know, working remotely, schooling remotely, whatever we were doing, but we were coming together for dinner and just a time that we would have never had this not happened. So that might be an example, something that you've had that's been positive in the midst of this. So happiness feels kind of hard sometimes when you have all these tough things happening. Maybe your natural go-to emotion isn't happiness. And how much control do we have over happiness anyway? So let me tell you, 50% of happiness is determined by your genes. So 50% of your happiness is genetically determined and you don't have any control over it. So whether or not you're a happy person, 50% of that is something you don't have control over, that's genetic. And 10% is your circumstances. Only 10, doesn't it? Don't we tend to think it's much higher than that? And then 40% of your happiness is tied to your thoughts and your actions and your attitudes. So 50%, no control. 10%, some control. 40% of your happiness is in your control. And that's really where positive psychology comes into play. So how do we help people really maximize that 40%? Because changing our behaviors rather than our circumstances can significantly increase our well-being. And that's news to a lot of us, because a lot of us that, you know, if I had a different job or a nicer house or better health or something, that I would be happier, when in fact, the research shows us that it's not the circumstances that really tip the scale. So, and there's benefits to happiness, many benefits, and here are just a few. So 75% of job success is predicted by the level of optimism, social support, and the ability to see stress as a positive challenge. 75%. Only 25% of your success in your job when you're working or when you were working is tied to your IQ. And when your state of happiness increases, a chemical in your brain called dopamine increases. And that's like the feel-good. That's a feel-good hormone in your brain. The other thing that happens when we're happy is we have an increase in our creativity, in our energy level, in our cognitive function, our intelligence, and our ability to learn. There's a 31% increase in productivity when your brain is in positive instead of negative, neutral, or stress. So this is why some organizations are really working on positive psychology for the people who work there, right? To increase productivity. In fact, people who there have been some studies done of people who are in sales. They have better sales when their brain is in positive. Doctors make more accurate diagnoses. So you want a happy doctor, right? And companies have better outcomes. Better overall physical and mental health for you when you're in a happy state. So there have been some additional studies about the benefits of happiness and positive psychology interventions. And what we've learned is that there are overall improvements in health and decreased or alleviated symptoms of depression and increases in overall well-being. And so I want to talk about that for a minute, because depression is really common in older adults, and especially tied to the losses that you're experiencing, perhaps the death of a spouse or a close companion. And sometimes if we need help with things that we didn't used to have help with, or have financial challenges, that we can become more susceptible to depression and a decline in our well-being. The thing that's tricky about this is a lot of times the symptoms of depression are also symptoms of other challenges that people experience during old age. Perhaps it's related to function, but things like not sleeping well, having a change in your appetite, stopping doing some activities that you used to enjoy, or feeling like life isn't worth living, are all symptoms that could be depression. And sometimes we miss out on treating people, giving them the treatment that they need, because we're assuming it's tied to other things that are happening in their life. And so what we've learned is that positive psychology is an excellent intervention to help people with those symptoms, whether it is just to the experiences that they're having in their life, or if it is an actual depression, that people do better when we do positive psych interventions. People are better able to tolerate pain. They can adapt better and cope with changes or challenges or the big stressors that are happening in their life, often have improved sleep, and they're able to cultivate positive experiences in their life for them and others, and strengthen their immune system. So this is sort of the sales job. This is why what I'm sharing with you today is important for you to consider in your life. And the other thing is, maybe you've seen the term positive aging, or you've seen articles like, the top 10 steps for positive aging, or the 5 key, or the 8 elements, or whatever. There's all kinds of things in the literature about things you should do for positive aging. And positive psychology is really a big part of that. So it is important, in order to have positive aging, to recognize the sources of happiness that are actually a part of growing older. To be able to adopt a positive viewpoint of aging, there's a lot of sort of ageism in the media, and to really be able to celebrate the positive aspects of your life and the things that are challenging, to recognize them as something normal that a lot of people go through. So we embrace the mindset that you're going to do whatever you need to in order to do the things that you love, or that things are important to you. Sometimes that means adapting in some way, and changing in some way your focus, so that you can keep that purpose of having a life worth living at the center, in spite of everything that is different or maybe challenging for you. So I want to start talking about these elements. So Martin Seligman is a psychologist and really kind of the father of the positive psychology discipline. And he identifies these core areas, these 5 core areas, to be the key elements of psychological well-being and happiness. So PERMA, and it stands for positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And really talks about that engaging in a variety of activities to bolster your PERMA, these 5 things, will help to promote happiness and well-being in your life. So I'm going to go through each of these 5 elements. And while I do that, I invite you to reflect on your own life and think about, what are you already doing in any of these 5 areas that help strengthen them? And maybe consider, what might you do to bolster some of these elements in order to help to build and foster your well-being and happiness. So the first one is positive emotions. So many positive emotions, lots of things we can think of. And so there's a strong interconnection between emotional health and mindset and behavior. So positive emotions ultimately enable us to flourish. And what this means is that the benefit of experiencing positive emotions goes beyond that present pleasant moment. Positive emotions broaden the range of thoughts that we have, and that drives our actions. So positive thoughts drive positive actions. And this enables us to build personal resources that promote our psychological growth and improve our well-being over time. So as you are promoting positive emotions within yourself, it helps you be better able to handle stress and to think creatively, and to be able to continue to move forward and not become so stuck in the tough things that happens. It might not come naturally for us, right? So we have to work to focus on emphasizing the positives in our life. So you might discipline yourself to reframe negative perceptions and to cope with emotions or the dilemmas that you experience in your aging. So like for me, for example, as I mentioned, my favorite way of teaching is when we're all in a room and we're having conversation together and we're trying out things. And so my reframe on that was, I was just reframing that I was just grateful that we could have this time together, and that maybe I can shift my expectations a little bit and instead just feel joy and gratitude that you all showed up today, even though, we're trying to do this by computer. So, and this is really why at the beginning of the session, I asked you to think about something positive that's happened in the midst of all the challenges of the last several months, because the goal is to help you shift so that your brain is paying attention to the good things. So the next element is called engagement. And engagement's kind of about flow. So you think about when you are engaged in an activity, something that's really interesting and meaningful to you, something that you enjoy, whether it is work or service or a hobby, or some pastime that you enjoy. When you are really engaged in something and you kind of have that flow going, you're really humming, and maybe you even lose track of time. Time flies, and that's because you are experiencing an engaging activity. And what we've learned is that when we are engaged in activities that meet that engagement or give us a sense of flow, it floods the body with positive neurotransmitters and hormones that elevate your sense of well-being. So that's why doing these things make you feel good. And this engagement or flow helps you remain present. It helps you synthesize information and engage in the activity in a way that creates often a sense of calm or focus or joy. And it stretches your intelligence, your skills, and your emotional capabilities. And for many of us, engagement also comes from connecting with others. So doing some sort of activity that involves other people. So think about what is something that you do in your life or something that you used to do that elicits a sense of engagement or flow, a sense of calm and joy. And how can you make that a priority for yourself? And if you haven't been doing it, is there some way that you can recapture it? Or maybe a way that you could adapt it and have it change form in some way that feels more doable to you and gives you the sense of engagement to help build your well-being and happiness. The next element is relationships. And relationships, in fact, are the best antidote to the downs in life, and it is considered the single most reliable up. So positive relationships contribute to your well-being, and they build resilience and enable you to feel joy. So social connections, love, intimacy, emotional and physical interaction with others are really key to your well-being. And I think the thing that's so challenging right now is the fact that we have social distancing and limits on gathering in the community. And in general, the older adult population is considered more at risk or more vulnerable to coronavirus. And so how do we try to balance this? What are you doing, or what might you try so that you can continue to keep those relationships at the center in your life, despite the fact that the pandemic has forced us to change, or that sometimes the challenges of aging also make that harder for us to do. So I want you to think about, what could I do to help stay connected and foster positive relationships in my life? So perhaps some of you have been on video for more than just this session. Are there ways that you could FaceTime or Zoom or connect with your loved ones? Or maybe the phone is a little less challenging, but think about that. What could you do to just build those relationships in your life? Okay, so the next one is meaning. That's number 4, meaning. Having a purpose, belonging to and serving something that's bigger than yourself. And it's about knowing what you stand for. So what do you belong to or serve? What roles do you play that bring purpose and meaning to your life? And if you've lost some of this, is there a way to get it back, even if it's adapted in some way? Or maybe find a new purpose that you can connect to? And the last one is accomplishment. Accomplishment. So accomplishment is about having a sense of pride in yourself that comes from reflecting on a life well lived, recognizing the high points in your life, maybe thinking about where you've had an impact on your loved ones or the family you've raised, or on some cause that you were involved in or in your work. So in this moment and in the future, you can fuel this sense of accomplishment by continuing to strive toward goals. So committing yourself to affirmative lifestyle choices that are tied to your ideals and your values. So maybe it's important to you to be able to have energy to play with your young grandchildren. And so you get regular exercise, or you make healthy food choices. Or maybe it's important for you to remain grounded in your faith, especially during these trying times. And so you have established a routine, you set a goal and you established a routine of reading scripture or attending a virtual worship service. So just thinking about not only pride looking back on your life and your accomplishments, but continuing to set goals based on what's important to you and then feeling good about achieving them. So that is the last part of this PERMA, this core thing for maintaining or promoting wellness and happiness in your life. So there's some work involved, right? I've asked you a lot of questions, things to reflect on, things that you might consider doing a little more of or doing differently. And that's really the point of positive psychology. It's really about retraining your brain to promote happiness. So humans in general are actually biased towards recognizing negative events. We tend to notice first when things don't go well, right? We spend a lot of energy noticing when things don't go well. But the intent of positive psychology is really this brain retraining and helping you shift the focus from the negative towards the positive experiences in your life and really retraining your brain so that your brain is automatically noticing the positives instead of the negatives. So when you focus on what's happening in the present moment, not the past, not the future, not worrying about the future or regretting the past, but really focusing on right here and now and trying to cultivate positive experiences, highlighting the good things that happen in life, even in the midst of challenges. Older adults are better able to adapt to the age-related changes and cope with these challenges. That's what the research shows us. So let's talk about some specific positive psychology exercises that you could try. So the first one, this question, what was the best thing about your day? Maybe it's the best thing about your weekend. So this is something that you can ask yourself, you can ask others when you're trying to connect with loved ones virtually, by phone, whatever, 6 feet away in the yard, talking with your grandkids, your neighbors, your friends, trying to shift the focus to something positive. In my family growing up, raising my kids, my husband and I just developed this habit way before I knew anything. Actually, I think positive psychology wasn't even a field yet, but anyway, we were just asking our kids every night. We'd crawl into bed and snuggle them one by one and say, what was the best thing about your day? And it's really our way of not just connecting with them and really trying to nurture the positives, but also really bolstering that in them because they get to re-experience those emotions when they tell you about it. So think about making that a practice. What was the best thing about your day? What was the best thing about your week? It's a great conversation starter. The next one is this idea of capitalization. So I kind of hinted at it a little bit when I was talking about asking my kids about the best thing about their day. And had we actually been in the same room for this session at the very beginning, we would have been able to talk about the good things that we're experiencing in the midst of all the challenges we face in our world right now. And that process of sharing good news is called capitalization. And so this idea where you sit and share good news with others, talk about positive experiences, the act of doing that actually increases the positive emotions associated with the event. And so, sort of on the converse, when you think about it, when you're upset about something, you had like some really frustrating thing happen and you retell someone about it, don't you feel those same negative emotions swelling up inside you, right? So you kind of end up reliving that, even though it feels really good to vent, you're not free from feeling those negative emotions. So this is kind of the opposite, where you're just really shifting to talk about the positive things, and sharing the good news actually increases positive affect and helps you to be able to remember them more. So try a little capitalization when you are gathering with people in your life or connecting with them. Satisficing. Oh, this is a hard one, I think. So satisficing is a term that is in my opinion, it's kind of like, it's sort of like just sacrificing to just be satisfied enough. It's basically making a conscious decision that something is good enough. You know, we are hardwired for perfection and want to have the best outcomes and, feel like we often feel like perfectionists or just really trying to obtain the best possible outcome. And there's actually tremendous value in satisficing instead of maximizing. So making a decision that this is going to be good enough. Making a decision that instead of us all being together in a large group in the same room, that satisficing and doing it over video is way better than not doing it at all, right? And so that's this concept of satisficing. And what we find is that satisficing is associated with greater life satisfaction and less depression. I mean, you have to decide what's the right thing to satisfice about. I mean, you don't want your surgeon to satisfy, right? You want him to do the best job. But just certain things in your life that you just decide you're going to let go and be good enough. So think about that. Is there something in your life that you could let go of a little bit? Something that, in fact, might bring you greater joy if you lower your standards, or at least free you up to have positive experiences in other ways because you've let go of that hard thing. So think about that. What's an example of satisficing that you've done, or something that you could do that would be good enough? And then the next concept is gratitude. So gratitude is this deep appreciation for someone or something that produces a lasting sense of positivity within you and often in them as well. And it goes beyond just being thankful. So in your efforts to care for your emotional self, adopting some positive psychology strategies are a really good starting place. And you can cultivate flexibility and joy by practicing gratitude, being thankful. So this picture is of my mom and I on a walk in the woods in the last season of her life. So despite cancer for many years, and despite losing her memory and her words due to dementia, she was able to find joy in the midst of that. And she was able to be grateful because somehow a long time ago, and probably because of that 40% happiness part of her gene is a big factor, and just the way she grew up and the choices that she made, gratitude and looking for the best in every situation and every person was a core part of her being. It just happened. And so even though she and we were facing a really long journey of tough stuff, the gratitude enabled us to feel joy in the midst of the suffering. And that is a gift for all of us. And so here's some things you can do to help bolster gratitude in your life. So there's this thing called a gratitude journal, where you get a little journal, or you can even just write it on your tablet or your laptop, where you just journal things that you're grateful for. There's another thing called a gratitude jar. You just put a little jar on your counter. And when you experience something that you're grateful for, you just write it on a little piece of paper, sticky note or whatever, and stick it in the jar. And you come back and you read those things. Some families do it and they read it at Thanksgiving. But you come back and you read over them and remind yourself, especially when you're experiencing hard times, And this can really help recenter you on all the things that you're grateful for. You can write a gratitude letter. You can write a letter to someone for whom you are grateful. You're grateful for something they did. Write a thank you note. Or have a gratitude visit. A little harder right now with the pandemic, but a gratitude visit certainly could be virtual or by telephone. When you reach out and connect with someone, just to let them know something that you're grateful for. And then there's forgiveness. This is a little bit harder sometimes. Forgiving ourselves and forgiving others, letting go of past regrets or mistakes or hurts. But it is really key to freeing you up and allowing you to feel more positive energy and to feel joy. And it truly is a gift to yourself. In fact, oftentimes we harbor things that we're angry about or hurt about, and the other person has moved on. They don't even have a clue. It's not affecting them at all anymore. And so you're holding on to this is actually hurting you. And so whether or not you actually reach out to someone to tell them that you forgive them, or you send a letter, or maybe you just write a letter that you never send, or maybe you write a letter to someone who's not even alive anymore, and you just read it out loud as a way of freeing yourself from these things from the past that you hold on to that are getting in your way of experiencing a joyful, happy life. It's a gift to you, forgiveness. Okay, so this concept, self-compassion, is actually kind of big. And so I'm gonna just break it down a little bit by talking about these 3 different areas. And I would invite you, when we're finished, if you're like at all intrigued or it kind of rings a bell with you, that you might want to look this up online and do a little bit more reading about it. Lots of great videos and books and all kinds of things related to self-compassion. But so for self-compassion, there's these 3 core elements: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. So first, let's talk about self-kindness. We have a tendency to say not so loving things to ourselves, right? When we're not doing well, we're struggling, we've made a mistake, whatever it is, we have a tendency to not be very gentle with ourselves. And so the emphasis in self-compassion around self-kindness is when you are focused on speaking to yourself and having thoughts towards yourself like you would if you were communicating with a loved one who was having the experience that you're having. So this is about using kind and gentle language to yourself and recognizing that you're doing the best you can, or that other people in your situation might feel the same way. And that brings me to common humanity. That's the next thing. So suffering and inadequacy are a part of the human condition. And this is really about embracing the sense of interconnectedness and recognizing that all humans struggle. We're all flawed. We're all a work in progress. We fail, we make mistakes, we have hardships. Some things are somewhat in our control and some are not in our control at all. But it's really about recognizing that other people have similar struggles. You're not uniquely flawed, that it's just a part of our common humanity. And then the third part is about mindfulness. It's about being aware of the moment-to-moment experience in an open and balanced way. So not being so tied to the negative, right? Just being here and now in this moment, allowing the thoughts and feelings and sensations that you experience to enter your awareness without resistance. So when sadness comes in, you're not judging yourself for feeling sad or saying, I should be, he died a year ago, I should be moving on by now. You're not judging it. You're just noticing it. You're just noticing, I feel sad right now. You're not pushing it away, not feeling flawed in some way or telling yourself a story about the fact that you're feeling that. Just feeling it. Just feeling it. And so it's really about seeing things as they are, no more or less, and avoid getting lost in thoughts of the past or the future, but just being here and now and opening yourself to the present of a positive experience. So that is like a really like Cliff Notes version of self-compassion, but a wonderful element of positive psychology that you might find helpful. And I encourage you to look it up and learn a little bit more about it, or have another session on it someday, something like that. So, okay, here's another exercise. This, if you could only do one exercise from this whole thing that we talked about today, maybe this would be it. So this is called 3 Good Things. So 3 Good Things is an exercise where you write down 3 positive things that happened every day and why. Like, what did you have to do with it? It wasn't just chance. Like, what is it about you that led for this good thing to happen? And you do this every day for 21 days. And the research shows lower rates of depression and increased happiness for people who can commit to doing this for 21 days. And I will say, I tell you a lot about my family. So when my husband and I were first married, we were both in jobs that were pretty tough and kind of had we were noticing all the negative things, right? So much that I discovered, like, every night at dinner, all we did was complain about work. And again, this was before this whole positive psychology movement had happened. I wish I would have tried to, I don't know, what do you call it? What's the word? Anyway, I wish that I'd tried to coin the phrase to get credit for it, this 3 good things, because I actually said to him one night, okay, we got to stop doing this. All we do is complain. And it just, like, you re-experience those negative feelings, and it like turns our night dark. It kind of grays things up at dinner. So from now on, every night we're going to come up with 3 good things about our day. And some days, admittedly, it was like I got to work safe and I got home safe. But those are good things, right? I drove safely, I was careful, I had something to do with it, it wasn't a random occurrence. And it really did turn things around for us. And so perhaps this is something for you to set at your dinner table or on your nightstand and think about it and see, what would it be like for you if you did this for 21 days, and see how different are you feeling, and have you retrained your brain to automatically notice the positives. All right, so the last thing, this is called a loving kindness meditation. Some of you may be familiar with or experienced with meditation that's very much focused on the breath, on breathing in and out, and just being very focused and centered on the breath as a way to calm the mind and body. And a loving kindness meditation is actually focused on sentences instead. It's a single focus meditation where we are focusing on compassionate sentences. And I would like to take a moment and invite you to just do this with me. So I'd like you to get comfortable in your seats and take some deep breaths. And we're just going to focus on saying these sentences repeatedly to ourselves, just as give you a little taste of a loving kindness meditation. So, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be at ease and happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be at ease and happy. And so if you were doing a loving kindness meditation, you might just have these written on a piece of paper or some variation of them, some positive statements. And if you find yourself drifting off as you get relaxed, it's okay. That happens. No judgment. Just gently come back to those sentences to center yourself. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from dangers. May I be well in body and mind. And may I be at ease and happy. So I'm going to leave you with a lesson from the sunflowers. Perhaps you already know this. Sunflowers are brilliant. They have this amazing ability to twist and turn as they're growing and developing. And sunflowers begin their day with their face facing the east, where the sun rises. And they actually follow the sun. They actually have the ability to gently twist and turn their stem, and they follow the sun throughout the day until sunset to the western sky. And then they turn back in the morning and do it again. And this happens all while they're developing. All while they're developing. And the wisdom in it is that the bees are attracted to the warmth. So their brown centers, because they're following the sun, are warm, and they attract the bees. And that is what is needed for pollination, or cross-pollination, and to be able to mature. And when we cross-pollinate the effects of the light and share it with our neighbors, all is well, a whole field. And so consider following the light and really fixing your face on the light, even in the midst of darkness and challenges, because it will help you thrive and to be well, and it rubs off on the people around you. That's what I have for you. So what questions did we generate during this conversation? Here she comes with questions. 0 questions. Okay. So do we? I don't know if I have the chat up. Let's see. Please feel free to questions. Okay. So sometimes the chatting thing is a little tricky. So I'll give you a reminder just in case you haven't done it in a while or you've never done it. So if you wiggle your mouse on the screen, you're gonna expose a little toolbar, and in that has like a bubble, almost like a cartoon bubble for chat. So if you click your mouse on that, a box will drop down and give you the ability to type a message if you have one.
Questions.
What's that?
You might get some later.
So why don't you sit by me and we can do this together. I'll put my mask back on to keep us safe, and we can do this together. So can you recommend any books on the subject that you found helpful? Yeah, so let's see. So there's a book by Sean Achor, Achor. I believe it's called, The Science of Happiness. Gretchen Rubin is another. She's done several books about happiness, including The Happiness Project. And Kristen Neff, Neff, is someone who's done a lot on self-compassion. And then other positive psychology specifically is Martin Seligman, Seligman. And I don't know if maybe like we could send an email out with some suggestions.
Yeah. And Dr. Kristen Neff has a lot on her self-compassion website, like free meditations and links to YouTube videos. So yeah, I'm happy.
Oh my gosh, there's so many good YouTube videos on self-compassion and positive psychology. That would be a great thing. So I can work with Katie and get you some information by email over the next couple of days. Yeah. Thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah, I feel like there's some confusion when it comes to the difference between self-compassion, and maybe you could speak to it a little bit further. Self-compassion versus positive thinking, or pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Oh, right. Thank you. So, yeah, we all like, well, most of us probably grew up with this, like, oh, quit crying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or you should get over it, move on. And really, self-compassion is really about understanding that you're suffering and giving yourself permission to feel the way that you're feeling and to actually speak lovingly to yourself. Speak the way that you would to someone that you care about who's going through a really hard time. And to notice that and recognize that we all struggle. You're not uniquely flawed. We all are flawed and have challenges. And so it's about being kind to yourself. Yeah.
And when we do that on a regular basis, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have a better ability to be able to cope with stressful life events. You are more resilient. You can deal with changes.
Yes, and reduction in symptoms of depression and anxiety. We have a lot of anxiety actually tied to that negative self-talk. So if you find yourself, if you were to listen to yourself and notice that you say, here you go again, or here you're failing again, or whatever, then those are things that can definitely be helpful to you. That's sort of your invitation to try self-compassion. So when do you realize that you need help if you're feeling anxious and nothing seems to be helping? So that's an excellent question. I think when people are struggling with symptoms of depression or anxiety, it's important to talk to your physician about it. We have seen a tremendous rise in depression and anxiety in the midst of the pandemic. And it's also a pretty risky time, or a time where it commonly happens for older adults. And there are some wonderful therapists in our community, including people that are doing therapy by video like this or by phone so that you don't have to leave your home. There are wonderful videos to watch, books to read, apps for phones, all kinds of things to help people. Because the best, while medication is often very helpful, it's often challenging in later life to be on medications, and it's important to be able to access therapy or to try positive psychology skills and interventions to help you feel better. So definitely speaking with a professional about it is an excellent idea.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It was fun.
You guys will all come back next week. I'm going to share a little bit about movement as medicine. So basically what physical activity can do for you. So I hope that you plan to join us next week. It will apply to everyone, regardless of your age or health status. I promise I'm very excited about that talk. It will not be a exercise class. We will do some physical activity, but mostly it'll be more of a presentation, and hopefully we'll all learn something. So
very nice.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Fix your eyes on the good things. Yes.